Assalamu alaikum. My name is Camille Dubois, and I am from Paris, France. If you had asked me a year ago whether I believed in God, I would have laughed in your face. I was a forensic pathologist, a scientist of death. For 18 years, I worked in the morgue of one of the largest hospitals in Paris. I have examined more than 3,000 dead bodies. I have seen what death does to the human face. The grey skin, the sunken eyes, the silent terror frozen in the muscles of the jaw. Death never smiles. Death never looks peaceful. That was my truth for 18 years, until they wheeled in body number 3047. I grew up in a quiet neighborhood in the south of Paris, the only daughter of 2 university professors. My father taught biology. My mother taught philosophy. In our home, God was treated as a charming superstition for people who could not bear the weight of reality. We did not pray. We did not visit churches. We celebrated Christmas the way one celebrates a national holiday, with food and wine and absolutely no mention of Christ. I remember being 7 years old, asking my mother what happens when we die, and she smiled at me and said, "Nothing, my love. The lights simply go out." That answer shaped the next 30 years of my life. I excelled in school. I studied medicine. I chose forensic pathology because I wanted to understand the human body in its most honest state. Silent, opened, revealing every secret it had hidden in life. I was good at my work. I was respected. I had a small apartment near the Seine, a cat named Voltaire, and a circle of brilliant atheist friends who debated philosophy over expensive wine every Friday night. From the outside, my life was complete. Yet despite being surrounded by all the comforts of a successful Parisian existence, a deep, pervasive sense of emptiness lingered in my heart. I told no one. How could I? I was the woman who had spent her entire career proving that the soul was a chemical illusion. But late at night, when I returned to my empty apartment, after a long shift cutting open the bodies of strangers, I would sit on my balcony and look at the sky and feel something I could not name. A hollow, a question with no shape. The morning everything changed was a Tuesday in October. The rain had not stopped for 3 days. I arrived at the morgue at 6 a.m. and my assistant handed me the file. Yassine El Amrani, 24 years old, Moroccan nationality, killed in a motorcycle accident on the périphérique at 1 a.m. Single impact, massive trauma to the chest. I had performed thousands of autopsies on young men who died on that road. I expected nothing unusual. I pulled back the white sheet, and I froze. His face was smiling, not the grim contraction of muscles you sometimes see after sudden death. A real smile, soft, peaceful, as if he had simply closed his eyes in the middle of hearing good news. His skin had not turned the grey I knew so well. There was a warmth in his expression that defied every physiological rule I had ever learned. I stood there, with my scalpel in my hand, and I could not move. My assistant, a young man named Julien, walked in behind me and stopped. He whispered, "Madame Dubois, are you all right?" I did not answer him. I was looking at a contradiction. I was looking at a body that had not received the message that it was dead. I performed the autopsy. Everything inside was as expected. Ruptured aorta, broken ribs, catastrophic internal bleeding. He had died in seconds. There was no medical explanation for the expression on his face. I closed him back up with hands that were shaking for the first time in 18 years. That afternoon his mother came to identify him. A small woman in a long, dark coat with a soft white scarf wrapped around her hair. She did not scream. She did not collapse. She placed her hand on her son's cheek and she whispered something in Arabic, and tears fell silently down her face. Then she looked at me and she said in careful French, "Madame, my son was a believer. He died with the name of Allah on his lips. This is why he is smiling. He saw what we cannot yet see. And she walked out. I went home that night, and I could not eat. I could not sleep. I sat on my balcony in the cold October rain, and I asked the empty sky, for the first time in my adult life, what did he see? The next morning I did something I had never done before. I went to a bookshop near the Sorbonne, and I bought a French translation of the Quran. I told myself it was scientific curiosity, a pathologist studying a strange phenomenon. I hid the book under my mattress like a teenager, hiding a forbidden novel. For 3 weeks I read in secret. I expected primitive mythology. I expected contradictions and absurdities I could mock with my friends over wine. Instead, I found something that terrified me. I found a book that knew me, a book that described the embryo in the womb with a precision that left my medical mind stunned. A book that spoke of the seas, of the mountains, of the human heart, with an authority I could not explain away. And then one night I reached Surah Al-Fajr. I read the verses where Allah calls to the soul at the moment of death. O reassured soul, return to your Lord, well pleased and pleasing to him. Enter among my servants and enter my paradise. I dropped the book. I understood, in that single moment, what Yassine had seen. I understood why he was smiling. The realization that dawned on me next was not a thought. It was a flood. 18 years of certainty collapsed inside my chest like a building falling in on itself. I sat on the floor of my apartment and I wept, the way I had not wept since I was a child. I did not know the words, but I felt like I understood everything. I tracked down Yassine's mother. Her name was Fatima. She lived in a small apartment in the 19th arrondissement. I knocked on her door without warning, a Parisian pathologist with red eyes and a Quran in her bag. She opened the door and she looked at me, and without a single question she said, "Come in, my daughter. The tea is ready." We sat in her kitchen. The smell of mint and cinnamon filled the air. She did not lecture me. She did not push me. She poured me tea in a small glass with golden patterns, and she told me about her son, about how he prayed 5 times a day, even on the construction sites where he worked, about how he sent half his salary home to his grandmother in Casablanca, about how the last message he sent her, 2 hours before the accident, was a verse from the Quran that said, "Indeed, to Allah we belong, and to him we shall return." I asked her, with a voice that barely held together, "Fatima, how do I become Muslim?" She took my hand across the table. She smiled the same soft smile I had seen on her son's face in the morgue. And she said, "You already are, my daughter. You only need to say the words." I pronounced the Shahada in that small kitchen, with the steam of mint tea rising between us, on a grey Tuesday afternoon in Paris. I bear witness that there is no God but Allah, and I bear witness that Muhammad is his messenger. It was as if a lightning bolt had struck my soul, illuminating every dark corner of doubt I had ever harbored. I have been Muslim for 9 months now. I still work at the morgue. I still examine the bodies of strangers, but I no longer see only flesh and silence. I see souls that have departed. I see the unmistakable difference between those who died in fear and those who died in peace. And every time I pull back a white sheet, I whisper a small prayer for the one who has already gone home. My journey was long and sometimes painful, but every moment of doubt was worth it to finally arrive at the truth of Islam. To anyone who is searching, keep your heart open, listen to the Quran, and never ignore the truth when it stands clearly before you.